Good morning, Bernadette.
Hi, Tajania.
How are you today?
All right, how are you?
I'm good. I'm excited.
It took me a second to find my unmute because it had like lowered itself on my screen.
When you share
Oh,
screen,
no.
I
Yes.
know when you're sharing, you lose all direction. I don't know what is happening.
It's true.
I just know that I'm sharing my screen. That's all I know. So we are right at 11:30. Is it okay if we give folks another 2 minutes or so, or 3 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I call that the 5-minute Zoom grace period.
I sent another reminder out, I think this morning, so hopefully folks had a chance to read it.
Well, I feel like these days it's okay. I'm used to talking to a wall at this point. So.
We don't want you ever talking to the wall. We don't want that.
Thank you, by the way, for your support last week.
You are most welcome. I know there were a lot of questions and a lot of moving parts.
There were definitely a lot of questions.
I know it's a very active group, and it's so funny because sometimes I'm like, oh, do they even remember they're on this committee? And then they get in the meetings and they're like, what about these 25 things? Did you think about those 25 things?
And I said it felt a little bit like my dissertation defense. So I was like, I'm ready.
It is not supposed to feel like a dissertation defense. No, but I understand for sure. I understand.
Lots of questions and you got to be on the spot. So grad school has taught me well.
It's funny because I think that one of the questions that people often have about new course opportunities is, how does this not already exist? I think people are really surprised about, learning that certain classes aren't already a part of the curriculum and sort of what it takes to get a new class. There are multiple steps. It's not like we just come up with a class and then run with it. It takes months to get a new class off the ground, even if you've already put it together. And it's a good reminder, I think, for our PhD students who may be thinking about careers in the academy, that you can design courses and it may take a year before you can teach that course.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
You may have multiple people to convince that course is even needed.
It's the fun of that committee too.
Right. So I sent a reminder just now, another reminder. So folks can hop in, but I want to be mindful of your time especially. So I say, let's get started, and people can hop in where they arrive, when they arrive.
All right, sounds great. Okay, well, hello everybody, and happy Monday. My name is Bernadette So. I am Executive Director of the Career Development Center. I'm going to actually demo for you a number of career resources for graduate students. Before I actually start touring you through these resources, what I wanted to do is give you a little bit of background on careers in general, give you a little bit of background on myself, so that you know how much I really love graduate students, and I want to make sure that you are well supported no matter what path you choose to take as you complete your degrees and through your degrees at Rutgers Newark. So as I mentioned, my name is Bernadette So. I hold a PhD in molecular biology, and here I am running a career center. So as you can tell, there's been a little bit of a twist and turn in my own career. And I think that that's something that I want to make sure that you think about. So for me, my path really, I thought, was fairly straightforward. All the way from my first year of undergraduate and all the way through college, I pretty much thought I had a sense of what I wanted to do. And so in terms of being able to pursue my own path, I really felt like I was graduate school bound because I was going to be faculty. And so I really thought that as I entered graduate school, I knew what I was going to do. I had it figured out, and it really did feel like a very straightforward path. Now, that may not have happened for all of you. That may be the case for a lot of you. But I think that there's a reality that in terms of career, it may not feel like this entire jumble. It may feel just like a little twist or turn somewhere here or there. However, for some of you, this really may fully represent what you have experienced in terms of your own career path. And that's the reality for why, as a career center, we want to be able to provide you with different resources, because we don't know when various twists and turns may happen. We don't know what those twists and turns may be, but we want to be available for you so that as you experience those things, you don't feel like you're the only person who has ever experienced that, and that there are no resources available to support you at that time. Those are things that we want you to be able to reach out to our office, use our resources, access someone who can actually help you to figure out what exactly does this turn mean for me. It doesn't necessarily have to be quite as drastic as my sort of moves, but I will say that as much as it feels like, and the way I've framed it sounds like it was this drastic move, I can tell you that a lot of the skills that I learned in the lab, in managing my dissertation, managing myself as a graduate student, they play very well in terms of being able to run a career center, in terms of being able to manage a lot of different demands as a university administrator. There's a lot of different things that can come from those experiences. And those are the things that I think make it really important for me to make sure that you're aware of what's available to you through our office. Okay, so a few other things that I want you to know are that your careers certainly are going to be things that are driven by the things that you think about for yourself, some of the suggestions that are made for you by your faculty members, your advisors, a lot of people within your academic setting. I think the other piece, though, that I want you to also recognize is that your career options are more expansive than very likely you have considered. And so I'm just showing with you on this page a few representative sites, both in the sciences as well as in the social sciences and humanities, that there are websites that actually show you that you know, and not necessarily just PhDs, but also master's students, that there are lots of different career options that you can go into and pursue. Because as much as you are specializing in an academic discipline, you are also learning a lot of different skills that you're going to be able to take to a lot of different places. So I think that's also an important point that I want to make sure that you're aware of. Okay. And I think my argument, and I will tell you that Dean Henderson is very aware that I have made this argument even with program directors, is that your career preparation is the same regardless of the direction that you are heading towards. And I want you to kind of bear that in mind, because I know that myself as a graduate student, at one point, I really felt like I might be doing something that seems very contrary to what my advisor, what my PI really wants me to do. And honestly, when it came down to it, it really wasn't, but it felt that way. And so I want you to really think about the fact that the research that you're doing can certainly go into an academic research career. At the same time, it can be that that critical knowledge, that deep knowledge that you get can be taken into places like think tanks or consulting or patent law, right? Your teaching can be something where if you like to teach, you can continue to find ways to teach, but it could also be that the things that you learn from teaching can be taken also in different directions as well. And service, and I use these as sort of the, standard traditional things that people point to as your preparation in graduate school, that service can also be something that is not only an addition and a boost to your application when you are looking for faculty positions, but if you're looking for positions that are not faculty, and that could be anywhere, that you can take those and you can really be able to convert them into other ways to describe your experiences that are relevant for a lot of other positions. So this is where I think that one thing that's really important to keep in mind is that you don't have to necessarily say, well, I'm now thinking of something that doesn't feel like it's going to stay with a faculty position or a position that's very heavily academic, and think that everything that you need to do gets upended. It's now just kind of thinking about what's the lens that you look through it, and really how do you do that preparation in a way that helps you to continue to progress towards your degree, but also helps you to figure out, how am I going to be able to articulate these experiences in a way that's going to be really meaningful for the people who are looking at that information. Okay, so before I jump into the versatile PhD, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. If you have any questions along the way, please feel free to put them in the chat. I know that I am operating under a whole lot of different screens today, but I will try to make sure that I actually also have the chat window open and can answer questions for you.
I can also help with that, Bernadette.
Thank you, Tajania.
If any questions pop up.
Great. So what I'm going to do is actually take you all to Rutgers Newark Handshake. And I'm hoping that many of you have actually been here before. But if you have not, in order to get to Rutgers Newark Handshake, it is rutgers-newark.joinhandshake.com. So that is how you're going to get into Rutgers Newark Handshake. What you will see when you land there is this is the homepage. Recognize that as a graduate student, all of you have access to Rutgers Newark Handshake. If you have any difficulty, you can certainly email our office and reach out to us to ask for some assistance getting into the system. So there are a ton of different things that you can look at in Rutgers Newark Handshake. The instinct, and I think that this is why Rutgers Newark Handshake actually put this as the first thing that you can click on the left-hand side, is that most people just say, well, this is the jobs board, and that's all I'm going to look through. It's a much more robust platform for that. And then that. So what I will say is certainly look for jobs, look for opportunities here, but also recognize that events are events that actually are not only things that are through our office. So in our careers, our Newark Careers is actually an event that is run through the Career Development Center, but you will see actually, and I apologize, it's probably my own filtering that shows everything that we're doing. I'm a little bit biased, is that if you actually look at things that are virtual, if you want to sort by different filters, things that are happening this week, you can click through all sorts of different things. What you will notice is that Some of these events will actually be things that are not just through the Career Development Center. And so this is an opportunity for you to just be able to see what kinds of opportunities different organizations are actually sponsoring. Some of them are really very specific. Some of them are talking about just how to do a job search. Some of them are information about different organizations. So it can be a way for you to just get some information about different organizations and what exactly they're offering. You'll see there are career fairs and all sorts of different things that are actually offered here.
Bernadette, can I jump in on this point for a
Yes.
second? Because I didn't realize this about Handshake. I thought the Handshake events only listed Rutgers events. So for the graduate students that are joining us, this is really critically important. Handshake is listing events and activities from corporations, Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 50 companies. I mean, you have an opportunity to see what Prudential is doing, what L'Oreal is. I'm looking at L'Oreal right here, what L'Oreal is doing. It also gives you a chance to meet more people and to be introduced to more people who are in a hiring position, a hiring role. And that can be super helpful. It is often who you know that helps you get into the door and helps you get noticed by some of these organizations. So I encourage you to please take a look. I've put the Handshake link here in the chat. Please take a look at Handshake and just go through. And if you are free and you have 30 minutes, why not join the L'Oreal folks to learn more about what they're doing and who they're looking for? They may very well be looking for someone with your skill set. And you may be thinking, oh, but I'm working on something in, I don't know, criminal justice. Maybe L'Oreal isn't interested in that, but they may very well be interested in somebody with a data analytics background, someone who is very familiar with running data analysis, and that may fit perfectly with what you've done there in criminal justice. So please, please don't close off opportunities before they present themselves.
Yes, I think those are great points. I think one of the things that is a benefit right now, and definitely at this time, is that so many of these opportunities and these events are virtual. So if you want to just log in, listen to something, you don't necessarily have to be unmuted. You don't have to show your video. You can listen to some of these things. And the other benefit of some of this is that at a lot of these things you don't have to travel to, right? So this can be a great way for you to then explore organizations that are not just local, but can be ways that I will just share. The Career Development Center has been able to secure panelists from all across the US at this time, and we didn't have to pay budget for them to fly anywhere. We've even had some panelists from China at some of our events. There's no way we would have had the budget at this time. So certainly, and I remember what my graduate student budget was. I know that sometimes it's a constraint to really think about what exactly you can do, how much you can explore, how many things you can participate in. But this is a great time to be able to just say, you know what, I'm just going to click in, log in, listen for a little bit, see if that's of interest to me. This is a great way for you to be able to do this. The other piece that I will also share is that as we look at employers, this can be something that you can actually look through, and employers is the default term in Handshake. That doesn't necessarily mean that everybody in here actually is a for-profit organization. There are nonprofits in here. There are lots of postdocs actually listed in here. While there, you will probably see a lot of entry-level positions. One, you still might want to pursue an entry-level position, especially if you're thinking about any sort of pivots. Two, there are going to be positions that are going to be available for people who have more experience. And this is something, one other tip that I would also give to all of you is that very often the entry-level recruiters may be the ones who are in here. You might receive messages, as you can see, even my fake student account has received 3 messages from recruiters. One thing that I always suggest to graduate students is, if this is an organization that you're interested in, please note that for that organization. If you're looking at the entry-level positions, that may be completely fine. If you know that there may be opportunities that you are qualified for that require a little bit more experience recruiting, that's where I think that the benefit of Handshake is that as you look at an organization, and let me just kind of show you what you can see in any of these organizations. And you can see there's just a huge range in terms of what these organizations do, what kinds of organizations are here. So let's just quickly click down to nonprofit, just as an example, and you could always narrow down to, I want some bigger employers, you know, I want ones with reviews. You can do all sorts of things in here, but let me just show you what you are able to do if you click on any of these organizations. It's always going to depend on how much they actually populate in Handshake, but you're going to be able to find contact information. This organization just shows a website, but some of them will actually show an email address or a phone number to contact somebody in recruiting. If they actually have jobs posted, they will actually all be consolidated here. So for any of you who might have used LinkedIn to look at jobs, you'll see that some of these have similarities to LinkedIn as well. And if there are public staff that they're willing to share, they will put that there. The other benefits, though, of looking at an employer in Handshake is that you actually get to know anybody else who has been in Handshake as a student or an alum who has actually been at that organization. So that gives you an opportunity, for example, if you wanted to say, wow, I don't know what this person did, I don't know why they were working there, but you're kind of curious, you can actually look at their profile. If you decide you want to message that person, you can actually message them directly. So if you want to get some insider information for a specific organization, it doesn't necessarily have to be directly from that organization, although it could be. So I'm clicking on another organization and you'll see there's an email address. You can send messages. So you might be able to find that. But if you don't have contact information, that is where you have an opportunity to message somebody who's already had that experience. And that can be a really great way for you to get some information about what that kind of opportunity may look like. So those are a few things that a lot of students will default to and very often are the heavy hitters when you're going into Rutgers Newark Handshake and looking for a lot of different things. These will kind of rotate for you. So you'll see that on my fake account, a recruiter messaged me and would love to hear back. So it will remind you of things like that. And you will see that if you receive any messages from any sort of recruiters or even from students or alumni that you're reaching out to, that there is sort of a home place for you to be able to get those messages. What we're going to spend more time on is actually clicking on the Career Center itself. You can schedule appointments. So if you would like to meet with one of the career coaches through our office, you're welcome to do that scheduling through this platform. We're going to spend some time looking at the various resources here. In the resources section, and I'm actually, my fake account or my student account is actually set to be a graduate student. So you are going to see the same number of resources that I am showing for you here. And that way you're able to access a lot of this information for yourself. So we're going to kind of spend a little bit of time looking at a few different resources that are available to you through Rutgers Newark Handshake, through the Career Development Center, and in this resource section. So as you scroll through, you're going to see a whole bunch of different resources. I'm going to spend a little bit of time highlighting a few of them and recognize that as much as they will, and I will probably say this a few times as I'm going through resources, a good number of them are going to say or make reference to PhDs. If you are a master's student, please recognize that these are still very, very valuable and useful for you. Because it's still really, the goal is to address a graduate student population with a lot of this information. For those of you who are in the sciences, you may have already been familiar with My IDP. We wanted to make sure that it was available to you through here. So My IDP and sort of the social sciences and humanities version is Imagine PhD, are ways for you to actually plan out some options that align with your discipline, give you some ideas of what you can be doing. I'm actually going to spend a little bit of time on Imagine PhD. And even for those of you who may be in the sciences, I will say that I'd also encourage for you to actually look at Imagine PhD a little bit here. It's completely free to sign up. And this tool actually gives you a whole bunch of things. So you can take some assessments and it will save your results. So if you have taken any of these, just to get an idea of, you know, skills, your values, your interests, what it will do is then start to give you suggested career options. But if you say, you know what, I don't feel like doing that, you can actually look at them through different job families. So you'll see that the different job families really are on different areas that you might be thinking about for yourself. And you'll see that they are actually categorized here in a number of different ways. If, for example, you look at a job family, you will see the kinds of job titles that might exist. You can explore the kinds of careers that are there. There's ways in which you can actually develop connections and do a little bit more. There's information on how you can develop skills. And then there's additional job search sites that are actually located here. So that's a lot of information, which I think is really helpful. You'll also find general resources here. So you'll see tip sheets on how you might put together a resume and things like that. Really robust, especially for graduate students, because of the fact that it really does target what graduate student experiences look like and how you actually want to put this together. So all of those things are in Imagine PhD. The piece that I really love
Bernadette, can I
yes.
ask a question?
Sure.
Can we slow down just a second?
Yes.
You were able to access Imagine PhD through Handshake, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Is that the only way to access Imagine PhD? Do people
No.
have to log into that and then log into this other thing?
No.
Or is there a direct way to access Imagine PhD?
You can go directly to imaginephd.com. What I am trying to encourage all of you to do is just, I'm going to go through so many different resources today that this might be the easier way to remember everything.
Because they will all be in one place.
Correct.
Understood. I understand.
But I will say, if you, as I'm talking through all these different resources, you find one favorite, by all means, just go to the favorite.
So it may make sense for the folks who are joining us here today, as Bernadette is working through the demo, it may make sense for everyone to also join her on Handshake. So you too can sort of see on your own device what this looks like. And if you have questions, you can ask them in real time.
Yes. So I see that there's a question about, is there a way to look for specific positions through Imagine PhD? So what they do is, because they, if you're looking at some of this, you'll see that there are actually, and we'll go back to this, you will see a whole bunch of tip sheets, and then they actually pull from Indeed. So you'll see that there's a way for you to actually look at opportunities and the keywords that they use to actually draw from Indeed. So that is a way, but it again is a feed. So it's at least a way for you to get an idea. And I think sometimes, honestly, that's the hardest part sometimes in terms of looking at big websites like Indeed, is you go, I don't know what I'm supposed to put in there, right? So this can be a good starting point for you to realize, oh, these are some of the keywords that did pull up the kinds of things I'm thinking about or did not. So that's where I would suggest that this might be a good way to just get that starting point to figure this out. There's tons and tons of different ways. Like I said, you can look for positions through Rutgers-Newark Handshake. You can look through some of the other sites. Almost every single resource I'm going to show you is going to also connect you to a job board as well. And so it can get overwhelming. So I would say it can be helpful to get an idea of, is this the information that you're looking for first? And get an idea of, are there keywords that they're using? Are there specific search terms that they're using that are helping you to narrow down? Is it helpful? And this is the hardest part. Honestly, I could spend hours just telling you how you could job search. There are lots of different ways you can do it, right? You can search for job title. You can search for finding the kinds of organizations that you want, and then kind of looking to see, do they have the kinds of positions you're looking for? So there's lots of different ways to do it. And that's where I would say, especially as you're first skimming through some of these, you may want to get an idea of where are they directing you? Are the positions that are being pulled up the kinds of things that you're looking for before you go too far down any one of the resources for job postings, because you really do want to feel like it is kind of hitting the kinds of marks. And is that because that's actually the kinds of things that I'm looking for and they're doing a great job? Is it just because maybe I don't know exactly what I was looking for? And I share that just because when I was first searching, I had no idea what terms I was looking for. So I was typing in all sorts of things that would not have helped regardless of what search engine I was using, because it really wasn't helpful. So sometimes if you are sort of stuck in that area, definitely, take a look at how they're searching, but also it may be helpful to kind of, touch base with us. We may have suggestions on which places you may be looking. Okay. The one piece that I don't want to forget to show you in Imagine PhD that I think is helpful for any graduate student is this My Plan section. And I say that because if you go to the chart view, you actually can go up to 7 years out. Imagine PhD did put a limit of 7 years on how far you can plan things out. But you can actually plan out a whole bunch of different things and put them on this calendar for yourself. And realize what's nice and helpful about this is that in here, you can drag and drop goals, and you will see that the goals are degree completion goals. And so they give you suggestions for what exactly those degree completion goals are, but then they also give you career development goals, skill development goals, personal development goals, and money goals. So these are things that can help you to really think about, when do I want to prioritize certain things? How do those overlap with some of the things that I need to get done to finish my degree, right? And that can be a really helpful visual, really kind of customize your own plan. This can be something that then you can, as I mentioned, I was pulling up the chart view, but you can actually look at it as a list if you are the kind of person who likes to-do lists. And that way you kind of think about, do I need to adjust my goals? As you can see, apparently I should have determined my advisor a couple years ago. So I'm a little bit behind, but clearly haven't put together my committee and things like that. But this actually may help you to kind of think about, how do I want to plan this out? And then where does everything else fit in?
I love the individual development plans, and for folks that that have heard me talk about this previously, that the graduate school has used individual development plans with our graduate school fellows. And the reason is because the individual development plan gives you as the student a chance to take ownership of your own path and to create opportunities for yourself and to make those clear to the faculty that are advising you and working with you. So it's a way, I think, for students to sort of to have agency and also to feel invested and to get others invested along the path. I love how this tool on Imagine PhD lets you export events to your calendar. Mm-hmm. So once you figure out what the goals are, it is seamless. Like, this is project management 101. Once you figure out what the goals are, this tool will add those to your Google Calendar or your Outlook calendar so that you can see it. You can see it's coming up and you get reminders about it. I mean, it's delightful, and I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, I love it because I love a checklist, but I also love a visual. And the fact that I can switch back and forth between the two is great. And like I said, if you realize you need to move things, you can move them, but you can also put them on your calendar. It's a great way also to, again, potentially have conversation with your advisor to kind of say, this is what I thought my timeline was going to be. Do I need to adjust that? So it really can open up conversation, but it also can be a way for you to then think through, how am I going to manage some of my job search, some of my academic requirements, and all of those different things all at the same time. So this is why I do think that as much as this tool has been focused on the humanities and social sciences, I think anybody could really use My Plan because it's such a really useful tool. And you can add your own goals. So if for some reason the pre-populated goals don't exactly fit what you need, you can actually customize those as well. Okay, so that's Imagine PhD. We're going back to Handshake right now. And as we go through Handshake, as you can see, we've gone through Imagine PhD. I did not click through my IDP, but very similar, some inventories and things for those in STEM disciplines. We are going to actually spend a little bit of time now looking at Aurora by Beyond the Professoriate, which is a very long term, but really great, useful information. Now, I will tell you that you'll see there's some descriptions of this. We have hyperlinked how you're going to log in. When you log in and click here, it's going to ask you, do you already have access? You do. So log in through your institution. And then actually because I was already logged in, you won't get the exact screen if you're logging in, but you log in through your institution, and then it's going to ask you, what is your institution? So you will see that there's a Rutgers University, and then it actually says New Brunswick and Newark. Click on that, and it will probably ask you to single sign on if you haven't already been single signed on through so many other things. But basically it will single sign on, recognize you to get you into the platform. When we go into Aurora, you will see a whole bunch of different things that are in here. There's an entire interview library of graduate students, PhDs, who actually have gone from all different disciplines. So you can narrow down by discipline, or you can narrow down by the interests that they have had. And that can give you a good idea. And I mean, some of these are very, very broad skills. So for example, love of learning probably drew in a lot of you to graduate school. And so if you wanted to say, look, there's 108 interviews of people who talk about how much they love to learn. If you want to narrow that down by some other skills as well, by all means, you can do that. But all of these videos will give you an idea of the discipline that PhD is in. And then it's a short snippet about what exactly they've experienced. And so that can also give you an idea of some advice that people have, the paths that they've taken. And I feel like sometimes you just want to be able to hear that somebody's been able to do something. And so this is a really great way to just be able to view some of those things. You'll see that Aurora also has things like workbooks that you can do. They actually also connect with Imagine PhD. So you'll see there's overlap in some of these tools as well, in terms of what you're able to do. The way in which they term these things are not exactly the way I would do it, but I'm sure that you will sort of get an idea of how they categorize them. So they have professional careers and academic careers, which to me is not that an academic career is not professional and that a professional career is not academic, but just to kind of give you an idea of how they actually separate those out. Obviously, academic careers are a little bit more of the faculty focused positions, and then professional careers are things that are sort of in that non-faculty role. They will give you some options. Again, you can take an assessment, but then can also give you some lessons on how to do some of this in terms of how you do that. And then again, it connects you to that video library so you can categorize these things. There are also courses, again, for how you do this on the academic side. So there are like courses, and you can basically do this self-guided and everything to really give you an idea of, you know, how you can actually prepare yourself for these careers, what kinds of things you're looking for. Really think a little bit about your skill set. And I've mentioned it a few times, but I will say that sometimes that is something that is very easy to skim through. And I say that from experience, knowing that in graduate school, I looked at job descriptions and I said, yeah, I could do that. Yeah, I could do that. Yeah, I could do that. But I couldn't really articulate why I could do that. And that took a long time. It took me months to figure out how I could actually describe to somebody how I can and why I can do a specific skill. And that is something that I think is really valuable in terms of being able to watch some of these videos. You'll see that people keep emphasizing this whole skill thing. And it's not to say figure out that you have skills, because one, you definitely have skills. But two, a lot of that emphasis on skills is the way in which you are going to be successful in your job search, no matter what search it is to be able to articulate your skill set. Help people to understand how you've developed the skill set, why it's valuable, how much of a skill you have in that area. It can be very easy to, or easier to articulate that if it is tied to your discipline and it's something that you can, you know, you're justifying all the time. It's a little bit harder if you're now trying to explain how managing a project in a lab relates to how you can oversee staff in a career center, for example, right? And people don't always see those two as connected because they're thinking, well, your project management in a lab was with mice, and now you're talking about humans. And can you actually translate some of those things? So it can take some time to really think through that. And that's where some of these videos can be really helpful. Some of these little courses, these little assessments that you can do, again, all self-guided, but ways for you to be able to really kind of reflect on some of these things, especially as you are really thinking through a lot of different ways that you want to kind of potentially take your experience and go into this, right? So the other piece that I will mention to you is, in addition, again, and I apologize that it's not everywhere all in one place, but that's why I say, you know, learn a little bit more about all of the different tools and what's embedded within them, is under events within Aurora. You will see that they actually have various webinars that are specifically targeted to graduate students. They actually have an entire series for master's students, an entire series for doctoral students. But this is how you can look at a lot of these webinars. You'll see that you can actually watch ones that have already happened, but you will see that there's a bunch of live webinars and different things that you can access at this point. Those are really great, again, as ways for you to feel like, again, you're in a community of individuals who kind of feel that similar experience in trying to say, where exactly am I going to go? How am I going to figure it out? You know, what kinds of tools are going to be helpful for me? So that is a little bit about Aurora. I'm going to pause for a second before I go on to other tools. As you can see, a lot of these just have so many things, even within the tool, that's why, you know, I thought it would be helpful to kind of actually show you and really give you a sense of what's available. Okay. I'm going to just pull up Rutgers Newark Handshake again. Pause a little bit to see if there's any questions that are coming through the chat. And this, hopefully, as you're seeing me click through Rutgers Newark Handshake, it's also giving you a reminder of where you're going to find resources. So I'm going to Career Center and then going to resources, and then you're going to see a whole bunch of resources available through here. Okay.
Bernadette,
Yes,
can I ask another question?
sure.
I remember when we had a session talking about career opportunities in the area. So this must have been in 2020 in the fall, I think.
Mhm.
And one of the things that you and Deborah, who I think were our presenters, were showing us were job listings in the region and what employers in the region are looking for right now. And I remember being struck that employers in the region right now were looking for data analysis skills. And I wonder if, and we've emphasized this to students, and I think some
Mhm.
students get that that's a thing that employers are looking for, but I think there may still be a little bit of a gap between students' understanding and what employers are actually
Yes.
articulating that they need. I'm wondering if any of the other resources that you were just showing on the page before this might be useful to help students become more comfortable with talking about their data analysis skills. Like, should they be looking at LinkedIn Learning? Should they be looking at some of these other tools? Sort of how can my, chemistry students
Mhm.
convey to possible employers that they have the data analysis skills to be successful?
Um, so that's a great question. And yes, LinkedIn Learning and everything can be really useful. There was actually a reason I did not click randomly on the jobs. There's a purposeful reason that I clicked on here to be able to answer your question. So I think that one of the things, like I said, that happens very often with graduate students and with job descriptions is that graduate students look and go, yes, I can do that. And then they don't articulate exactly why or how they can do that. I cannot tell you the number of resumes I have seen from masters and PhDs who go, well, yeah, I could do that. And I say, wait a minute, how does the person know? And they go, well, hello, graduate degree. I'm like, no, 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 that's not the way things work, right? So, and I will say, it sounds silly, but honestly, the number of people who do it is amazing because of the fact that, again, I know and I understand this because I've done it myself. As a graduate student, you've learned so many of these things that they are default for you. Realize that for a recruiter, and it's not always a human, we'll talk a little bit about that in a second also, it's not always a human who's looking at your materials. Sometimes you are getting put through a system, a computer system, an applicant tracking system, where it is a robot, it is a program that they have put together to sift through applications. And that's not just for, oh, well, if I'm looking for a faculty position, it's always a human. That's not necessarily the case either. So recognize that a lot of that is that you have to be explicit in sharing your skill set. So the reason that I went here, and you'll see I probably was helping a graduate student because I put in consulting at some point. But even if I were to put in something like data analyst, right? And we were to search for a position, you will see that some of these may be very, very tech heavy, right? But if we were to look at something maybe like an associate data analyst, for example, we're going to look at this. I have not planned all of this out. So we'll see, because job descriptions are always very random in terms of how detailed they are not. If we were to look at this, for example, you will see a whole section on responsibilities, position requirements, and very often the sort of skim of what a graduate student will do. The reason that I wanted to spend a little bit of time just sharing this is that tends to be what happens for all job seekers, is after a while, it starts to all get blurry and you kind of go skim. Is this what they want? I might even skim through all the responsibilities and go, ooh, position requirements. Ooh, wait, master's degree preferred. That's what I'm going to get. And ooh, it's in that area. So I'll probably be good. Okay, so let's just assume that that's actually what happens is somebody goes, oh yeah, skim, I'm going to be a master's degree. So they already preferred me. And if it's a PhD, this is the, like, sometimes the worst thing is, and I say this from personal experience, I'm like, well, if they prefer a master's degree, they're going to love a PhD. Right? Without any thought to what exactly am I going to say to sell myself, right? So let's say that we kind of go, okay, this is interesting. A few things that you want to think about are, they actually want to know that you've said SPSS, R, SQL, Tableau, Looker. If any of those are things that you have actually used, right? First of all, those are requirements of the position. So make sure that you have actually called out the specific platforms you have used on your resume. Make sure that you are actually thinking about addressing some of these things, right? Have the ability to work collaboratively with teams. A lot of graduate students are going, yeah, I do that. Group projects. Okay, so, but then there's no description of a team project anywhere to be found on their materials. And this is where people are not going to jump to the conclusion that is already in your mind. You have to spell it out for them. You have to be able to describe that, especially because of the fact that there are a lot of unfortunate assumptions that recruiters may make about a graduate student. You're expensive, you want too much money, you're going to claim that you have a whole lot of experience, but you've just been studying the whole time, without really appreciating, I've done more in-depth projects. I've really learned, Tableau at a higher level, all of those things that you need to be able to articulate for them. So this is where you want to do a careful read of a job description. Make sure that those things are called out when you're writing out what you want to do. And then it may be, if for some reason, let's say you read this and you go, I keep seeing everybody saying things about, let's say, like this one is all about like managing timelines and driving outcomes faster and things like that, right? Those might be things that you can actually do, but it may just be that you think, yeah, but somehow my research is dragged out. They're going to think I just can't meet deadlines or things like that. This might be where you start to realize, is there a theme that now I can say, how can I now think about projects that I'm going to do that actually help to address that? Is there something where LinkedIn Learning or some other tool might help me to develop some of those skills? But rather than kind of going, oh, I think I need this skill without actually looking at job descriptions, sometimes takes, a lot of graduate students down the rabbit hole. Well, I'm finishing this degree, but I've heard my friend who has this other thing, and then I want to get another degree and another degree or another certification. Graduate school is notorious for convincing you that you need more education, right? Which might be the case, but it might be also thinking through, how are you actually articulating what you've already developed? And how can you make sure that you actually demonstrate that in your materials? So that's where I do think that even if you're not ready to apply for a job, make sure that you're actually spending some time peeking at job descriptions, getting an idea of, are these the ones that I think I would want to apply for? And then if so, what are the things that I can find in those job descriptions that I can say, I can definitely describe this or this or this experience in that way? Okay, so those are some things that I would say I would encourage you to think about, especially because there are so many things to think about in terms of all of this. So I'm also going to take a breather. I'm going to slowly click through back to Career Center, go back to resources, and make sure that I'm not overlooking any questions in the chat or things that maybe I need to also address. Okay, I think we're okay for right now. Let me show you a couple other tools. And then again, I'm happy to answer questions. So Versatile PhD is another tool that's in here. I will give you a heads up. They were having website difficulties today. So I do have a backup of some screenshots if I cannot get in. So if I cannot get in, which I know I was having difficulty with earlier, and I'm just going to quickly test this out. Yep, they're still having website issues. Give me 2 seconds and I'm going to show you a couple of screenshots just on the Versatile PhD. Okay, so let me pull this up. Okay, hopefully they will resolve these issues in a little bit, but you'll see again here on a screenshot that Versatile PhD will be something that you click through. They will actually have you set up an account, and it won't be through single sign-on, but that's just something that I want you to make sure that you're looking at. And then what you will see here is that they actually do have information on careers for humanities and social sciences, as well as careers for STEM. And I will say to the question that's coming into the chat in terms of resources or way to prepare when you're in the early stages, if you know what industry or employers you're interested in. So one thing is that I would say that if you know the industry, then definitely use these resources as a way to then narrow down that information. So if you know for sure, for example, you're interested in, and just because we were talking about this, data science, click on all of the data science resources that you can find in the tools that I've shared with you, because that is also going to give you a lot of the hints in terms of how you adjust your materials, the kinds of skills in demand by those areas, the kinds of different things that you actually want to be able to be thinking about and planning through during your time as a graduate student. So that can be really helpful. If you are still thinking about what exactly are my options, it's a great way to just quickly skim through a lot of this. And so if you were to click on, for example, program evaluation, what you'll see in Versatile PhD is, again, similar to some of the other tools I've shown you, they're going to show you resume examples. They are also going to have archived Q&As with people who have been in those careers. The thing that I like about Versatile PhD is they have these long-term profiles. And so in these long-term profiles, people actually talk about what exactly their path was from their graduate program to getting to where they were. And very often they actually showcase for you their cover letter, their resume, what they did in converting their CV to a resume, all of those different things through a narrative of, this is what happened when I was finishing graduate school. These are the things that I thought about. This was the sort of entry-level position I took after I finished. This is how I ended up here, right? So I think that's, again, some of those paths kind of conversations, they're in here, Versatile PhD, alongside job search materials. In Aurora, they are in videos. So again, some of these things really do give you lots of information. Other things in Versatile PhD, they also have a self-guided career course for you to be able to do if that's helpful for you. And you'll see there's a little bit of a difference between this one and Aurora. So you can also say which one makes the most sense for me. Other things that are helpful in Versatile PhD are that there are actually local meetups. There is one in New York City that actually meets monthly. And so they have been together for a very long time, but this can also be a way that if you feel like you really want to have a community and connect with people, this is an opportunity for you to do so. To what Tajania was mentioning in the chat, yes, a lot of the employers that you are seeing, I think the thing is that, yes, a lot of times a conversation really does end up going much more towards what are the positions that are full-time opportunities. However, there are a lot of opportunities that a lot of organizations will offer as an internship if you want. It might be something even less than that. So they will have open houses for graduate students, visit days. Those can be things that sometimes it might not even be a formal program, but if you actually reach out and you express interest, they may be able to offer you something like that as well. So that's where I think that, again, having these opportunities to really be able to connect with different individuals, really be able to ask these questions, research organizations is going to be a way for you to find a lot of different opportunities for yourself, get sort of an idea of how exactly you can navigate a lot of information, because it is a lot. And to that question in terms of employers, let me switch screens again real fast. Let me go back to my page where we're back in Handshake. And we're going to go back to the employers page, because I think that that actually is going to be helpful for you to see also. So when you look at an employer, and we're going to take a really big employer right now, just as an example. So let us take, for example, let's say PwC. So PwC is just a really huge employer, and yes, an accounting firm, but I will just use it as a quick example to kind of show you some of the things that you can actually find for a larger employer. So you'll see that if you are looking at somebody in Handshake who is a larger employer, you're going to get all sorts of reviews that you're able to see. You're able to see featured jobs. Clearly, this is a much more robust page than some of the ones that I was showing you earlier. You can see contact information, has the website. They have clearly put themselves all over social media. There's all sorts of jobs available. They give you a lot more information. There's all sorts of people you can contact, and you can see it's separated out. So experienced associate is one person specifically. There's even questions and answers, people who have worked there, tips that they're providing. They're giving you news and events and everything. So clearly larger employers are definitely going to have a whole lot more things very often in here. Not always a guarantee, but that is something for you to be able to see. What can be helpful in terms of looking at some of this information is that as you look through some of the things like the questions and answers, or you start to look at jobs, for example, you can look at all of the different opportunities and things like that. Sometimes what you're also going to kind of realize is that as you start to look at some of the descriptions that they have, that might help you to bounce from one employer to the next. I was just trying to think of, there are some other resources that we have here. I don't want to overwhelm you because I know we have tons and tons of resources through the Career Development Center, but a resource, for example, like what we have here, which is called Vault or Firsthand, actually does have all of these guides that will tell you who are the major players in a specific industry. So that might also give you an idea, especially if you know you're industry bound. Like I said, there are some of these are information. And so this is where I think that you're going to be able to find some of that information about different organizations, and not only the one that you might have in mind, but also some related ones as well. So there is that information. I mentioned, just so you know, I mentioned Quincia, or I haven't mentioned Quincia, but I've mentioned that a lot of systems use applicant tracking systems. And this is not just large employers, this is small employers as well. This is not by any specific industry, especially if you are asked to upload your document into some sort of computer system, they're probably using an applicant tracking system. And so this is where Quincia is actually a tool available through our office as well. This is where you would basically be able to upload your resume, and we simulate an applicant tracking system. And so it will pick up on different things that you might want to adjust, so that you actually are not rejected by an applicant tracking system just because, oh, well, I forgot, I put an extra space in between my hyphens. And sometimes applicant tracking systems will say, nope, that's not a date, or that's not, the kind of information we are looking for. And so this is where that tool is really helpful. Quincia does not only give you resume reviews, but also can help you. They also do mock interviews for you. You will be doing it with Quinn, who is, essentially a robot, but is going to pick up on different things through your interview, and actually will pick up questions and create questions for you based on your resume. So it is really, really be a good resource for you to use, because it will continue to give you suggestions on your resume, continue to give you suggestions on interviewing. What I will tell you that I've seen a lot is people are thinking, I am completely prepared for an interview. And I say, have you actually spoken out loud with anybody? And they go, no, it's all in my head. And then I ask them a question and they go, it sounded good in my head and it did not sound good coming out of my mouth. So practicing, even if it is with, doing it online, just being able to say what you want to say and rehearse that can be very, very helpful. So Quincia is another resource. Again, all of these completely free to you through our office. So please make sure that you access a lot of these things as ways for you to kind of get that all as a part of your preparation.
Bernadette, can I
Yes.
add a note here?
Sure.
When I was on the job market, companies weren't using robots and algorithms to review resumes. And I think that this shift in human resources and talent identification is probably the one that is most unknown to me. If you are applying for jobs, you cannot presume that a person will be seeing your materials. And I don't know how many different ways to convey that to our student population. You have to get past the robot. And that means in order to get past the robot, you have to anticipate what the robot is asking and what the robot is looking for. And you have to give the robot what the robot wants. Exactly. This is not just something that's happening in a couple big employers. Even mid-sized employers are using these algorithms to screen applications. So even when you look at something like, the online boards like Monster or even LinkedIn Jobs, they are using computer programs to troll those sites to identify people who have what they are looking for already in their description. You cannot assume that, I can talk about my data skill set when I get to the interview, because you will never get there.
Nope.
And this is just where we are. I know it's not encouraging, but what we're hoping we can do here is to give you the tools to prepare you for a changing marketplace. This is not a place to expect, I'm gonna send my stuff in and they're gonna see I went to Rutgers and maybe it's a Rutgers alum. A Rutgers person is not gonna see your materials. A robot is gonna see your materials. And that's who you have to tackle first.
I absolutely 100% agree. And I know there were some reactions that I saw.
I saw a sad face. I have a sad face too.
I saw sad faces, shocked faces, all sorts of things. What I will tell you is that I'm in complete agreement. Robots are not just, so let me break it down a few ways. So robots, absolutely, because, and that's actually true of LinkedIn. So if you have friends who are like, I keep getting contacted by all sorts of recruiters through LinkedIn, find out what keywords they're putting on their LinkedIn profile, because they probably have something that sounds shiny. And you might just have to think about, how do I stick in the shiny words that are being skimmed through LinkedIn? Same thing happens. And so this is why I actually pulled up that job description. It's not going, it's close enough in my experience. It's close enough. No. A robot doesn't know close enough. If they are trained to look for Tableau and you did not write Tableau, you don't have
spell
Tableau.
it correctly. If you
Right.
did not write Tableau and spell it correctly, you will not get looked at.
Right. So I think that there's definitely don't misspell Tableau. But all of those things, I think that, yes, Louisa, to your point in terms of networking, I think it's great to be able to connect with somebody in an informational interview and ask questions like, what are important skills that I need to highlight? What are the things that are trending? However, this is my asterisk to what I'm saying right now. You need to look at a specific job description. And I say that because depending on an organization and their mission and their values and the way in which they phrase things and all of that, right? One organization may say we partner with our clients, and another organization may say we collaborate with our clients, and the robot is trained to look for partner or collaborate. And so if you are saying partner for the collaborate organization, the robot thinks you don't collaborate. Okay, they're not a thesaurus. They are very strict. And that's why something like Quincia is going to help to look through some of these things. It's not going to be perfect because it's not necessarily always going to be that alignment that you need to. And yes, use their vocabulary in your resume, but don't copy and paste the job description and just shove it in your resume and think that you've called it a day. Because if you don't have the experience to explain your own specific example or whatever, yeah, you might get through a robot, but then you're going to look like a mess potentially during the interview. And I will tell you, there are people who are like, yeah, I did this great resume, I have all these interviews, and I ask them about questions on their resume and they're surprised by something that they put on their resume because it's been so long, they've forgotten, all of those kinds of things that you really have to think about. But definitely looking through and being intentional. It feels exhausting. Sometimes it is going to feel very redundant and you're going to say they all are starting to blur, but be very careful before you submit that you are doing some double checks with Quincia, that you're not doing those little things that you don't even realize. Look at the keywords, look at things that are themes, right? After a while, you're going to see, even within a job description, again, you're going to see something like partner, 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 partner. If partner has been one of those words that they used a lot, you should probably use it, right? But it's also thinking about how do you describe it in a way that it's in alignment with the definition that they've used for partner, right? And yes, think about those words. Think about how you are describing your own examples, and also prioritizing based on the job description, not on how much time you spent on something or how the bulk of your time was spent as a graduate student. Because I think that, again, graduate students are going to have that instinct. I had that instinct myself to spend all of this time talking about the research I did in the lab and then going, but the most relevant information was the stuff that I did outside, right? Like I was on student government. I was actually like working with students directly to help them figure out, like their graduate programs and all of that. And my first few iterations of my resume, those were things towards the bottom of my experience. Robots don't care. Humans that are looking for what's the priority are not going to care about those things, right? So that's where I think that it is. And I see that other comment, that a lot of graduate students, I kid you not, I am not making this up. I know of a graduate student who, I guess we don't really do this anymore, but back in the day, just stood in front of a copier, put the resume down and put in 90 and just hit print. And I was like, that is terrible. That is a terrible, terrible thing to do, because, you know, like, if you know it's generic, you don't think the other people reading it on the other side aren't going to think it's generic, right? Okay, a photocopied 90 times resume was not going to yield very much, right? Making those little adjustments are going to make a huge difference. And I think, again, it's beating the robots and realizing, even if it's a human, and I will tell you, having read a whole lot of resumes, not only to review resumes and provide feedback to students, but also when I have open positions and I have looked at candidates who apply to career centers, I'm going to tell you a few things. And these are definitely not necessarily in the resources, but definitely things I feel like you all need to know. Make sure you work on the resume, right? Make sure you align all of those words. Don't spend so much time on the resume that you go, oh, that like cover letter thing, it's a throwaway document. Nobody reads those. Guess who reads them when I have job openings? Actually, I'm the person who reads cover letters first, because that's the easier way for me to eliminate candidates, because most people go, oh, they're not even going to read the cover letter. I'm one of those people who reads the cover letter. And so that actually ends up being the easiest way for me to whittle down my pools, because unfortunately, I don't always have a robot. But what I will tell you is, I actually use the cover letter to see how much time that person spent customizing their materials. Because if the cover letter reads generically, and oh, I've seen people copy and paste for their resume. I hate that personally. But if they write things like, please see attached resume in their cover letter, I'm like, no. See, this is exactly why I'm not going to read your resume. So those are some things that you also want to think about, is you have to take advantage of every opportunity within the application, and not just say, let me spend so much time honing that resume that I'm looking past other opportunities. As Tajania said, it is actually, that cover letter is essentially a mini writing sample. Okay, and so that's how some people will say, okay, well, if I want to know how good of a writer you are and how good of a communicator you are, because that's part of the job, I'm using this as a writing sample without asking for a writing sample. So there are all of these little tricks and tips that you also need to think about, especially as you come closer to the job search. But I also will just say to you, if you're not ready for that yet, please make sure you're still looking at a lot of the information that we have as you're exploring, as you're thinking about things, but definitely as you get further along and you say, now I need to hone in on what I need to do, there's definitely a lot of resources available for you to understand how people have done it, get different examples, and then like tools like Quincia that are going to be able to pick up, this is what a robot's doing, and you need to fix this. Those are definitely going to be things that you want to take advantage of.
I love the way that you're articulating this, Bernadette, and it reminds me of what we were just looking at in Imagine PhD, and that is the ability to do this individual development plan. You can add an individual development plan to do that says, you know, semi-annual job search check-in, where you set aside, say, 2 hours every 6 months to update your resume, to see if there's anything new on any of these sites, to do a couple modules on interview preparation and sort of how you communicate. Do you say a lot? Do you have a fidget? Are you looking away from your interviewer? Do you seem distracted in the interview? It's an easy way to remind yourself that this is something to be done frequently, not just, oh, my money is about to run out, I'm in a crisis, but rather I'm planning all along to set myself up for success, so that by the time you've been doing this for, say, 18 months, you're ready. You know what to say, you know how to get people's attention, you know how to communicate clearly. And you're the type of employee that an organization wants to bring in right away because you're ready and they're ready for you. But if you have doubts and you aren't sure what your skills are and you don't know how much time you have to devote to preparing yourself for this path, then I think it will be harder for you. And I don't want you to feel like, or anyone to feel like, we don't have the resources to help you get there. But it comes down to you and how much time you put in.
Yes, absolutely. And I think I'm seeing some comments like, oh, I wish I know about the IDP. I wish it existed when I was a graduate student, okay? But here's what I'm going to say, and this is huge in terms of the way in which our office approaches career preparation and everything. Let's not get so sad about the past. Let's just figure out how to move forward. And as Tajani was mentioning, how do we think about things that are small actions that we can take, right? Oh, yes. What the internet looked like when I was a graduate student is vastly different than what it looks like now. Oh, so many stories. But what I would say is think about all of the little things you can be doing. So, for example, you get a paper published. One of the instincts, besides celebrating and going, yes, it's finally done, right, is make sure that you put it on a master document. It's on a master resume, it's on a master CV, you got that citation somewhere, right? You are going to be doing a presentation. Where am I putting this down? You know, I just finished doing something with my student organization. We just finished an event. Where am I putting this down, right? Sometimes it is those like, oh, I'm just gonna wait a little bit, it's okay. And sometimes I will say that then you start going and, you know, it's midnight and you're like, I'm putting together these materials and there was something that's really important in that publication, and you're like looking yourself up at like midnight to figure out what the citation is for your own publication, or, you know, you're emailing and messaging other people in your student organization like, when did we have that event and how much money did we raise and all of those things, because you're like, I know it's going to be really great for this opportunity I'm applying for. So doing little things are going to be helpful. Along those same lines, if you are trying to do an informational interview or connect with people in the industries that you're interested in, that's not always an instantaneous thing. So honestly, spending a little bit of time just thinking, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll just like send off a few emails just as a way to message somebody and just say, hey, can I, you know, maybe find a time to email you? Can we set up a Zoom? Can we do all of those things? It can take not just weeks, it can take months sometimes for people to get to you. People have no sense of time, especially now. And so they might have thought, oh yeah, I'll get to that person. And, you know, a few months later, it's like, oh yeah, there was that thing in my inbox. I meant to, but I will joke, but it's not so much of a joke. Sometimes I have a whole lot of emails drafted in my head and I did not hit send. So those are some of the things that I would say small little actions are going to be helpful for you. So you're not trying to cram things all in at the very end and you're not feeling like everything becomes overwhelming. So the more that you can kind of do these kinds of things that really do help you to feel like I can just, that's manageable. It's a good way to take a break and take a step back from, you know, reading my papers and things like that. Those are kinds of things that you want to do. Let's see, I see a question about how would I convince a robot without including any publications in my CV? Junior scholars don't get a chance. So a couple things that you want to think about are that what a CV looks like for a faculty member is not what it looks like for a graduate student. So that's a couple things. That's like the short version of this. What I will tell you is that, yes, of course, you are building up your publications when you are a graduate student. And so you are not going to have a list of like, you know, 10 pages of publications like your faculty members are. What your CV should look like and what you need to articulate and you need to enhance is the description of the courses you're teaching, and not just the content of the course. What level of students were taking your course, how many students were taking your course, what kinds of teaching strategies did you use in the course? What kinds of activities did you develop? All of those kinds of things are not necessarily what a faculty member is always going to put, because they're just going to say, I taught 101 and a 201 and a 301, right? But you need to actually describe what exactly is a 101 on your campus, right? What exactly is the content that you've described, right? Were you doing group activities? Was it a seminar? Was it a huge lecture? All of those details are things that you need to, as a junior scholar, think about providing greater description on those things. You're going to provide greater descriptions on the projects that you're doing. And all of those details are going to be important as you are starting to develop your own research agenda and you're starting to develop your own teaching portfolio. If you've taken courses on college teaching and things like that, those are things. If you're doing things to enhance your teaching skills and you're attending workshops and all of those pieces, those are things to highlight in your CV. So I hope that answers your question. Happy to address other questions that you all might have. I will say, in addition to that, think about getting information, especially if you are thinking about the faculty route. Get some information from people in your discipline, not just within your department, but across the discipline. Look to your professional associations, look to the departments where you are considering positions, look to see what kinds of things are showing up on websites, on CVs, the order in which those things are described, the priorities, things like that. Again, that is where, regardless of industry, the more you sound like the industry, the more you actually organize yourself in that same way, the easier it is for people to be able to see that you actually align. Best resource to look for when trying to work on extra skills. That is a very big, broad question, but I will try to answer it. One of the things that you want to think about is that talking to people in that industry is actually probably going to be one of your greatest resources. And I will say, talk to more than one person. I finished my PhD, spoke to somebody and said, I don't think I want to go and pursue a faculty position anymore. I want to work with students directly. And there was a person who I still remain in LinkedIn contact with, but who said, you should get another PhD. I was like, wait a minute, I just finished and you're telling me I have to get another degree? Well, yeah, because it's not in the right discipline. And I was like, thank you so much. I'm going to hold myself back from the tears and I'm going to go and ask somebody else for advice. And they were like, how about you just volunteer in an office so you can show some interest? So I think that that's where, again, talking about how you can get extra skills is also going to be a matter of people are going to have their own opinions about how you do that. The more that you talk to people in the industry that you're considering, the more that you're going to get an idea of there are multiple ways to do this. And so that might be a way to kind of think through what's manageable for you, what kinds of things are going to be things that might seem more attractive than others if you start to hear a theme, but that also may be something that you incorporate into additional conversations. Somebody suggested that I needed to go back to graduate school. What do you think about that? Somebody else suggested I needed to do this. What do you think about that? So some of that is important to really think about. Yes, and I agree with the comment in terms of looking at positions. Faculty positions don't have to incorporate research if that is not sort of your area of interest. If you really want to be dedicated to teaching, then yes, community colleges, honestly, there's some four-year institutions, depending on the size, scale, scope of that institution that may say, you know what, if you are heavily dedicated to teaching and you can demonstrate that, you have a teaching certificate, you've been doing workshops, you can really talk through all of the different techniques you've done, they're going to appreciate that. So that's definitely something to think about. How do you vet advice? That's really great. Like I said, some of it is that you are going to have to just say, thank you so much for your suggestions. But some of it may be that you also kind of have to think about what exactly you need to know for yourself. What is manageable for you, right? There are some things that might be sort of outside of your scope, and you might say that is really important advice, but at the same time, I might need to think about, is that manageable? Is it affordable for me? Time-wise, I mean, I was not about to go for another PhD after I got a PhD. And so, getting that kind of information is not necessarily the easiest thing. So this is where I think really kind of thinking through, but also kind of getting perspective. Is that the person who is giving you information for the position you should seek, or 3 positions later, right? Are they really kind of giving you sort of guided advice for how you break into a position, or are they trying to give you just general advice, right? So I think those are some things. And I would also say, just reflect on what you're hearing. Again, the more that you have conversations, the more you're going to know what kind of questions to ask. The first few times I did an informational interview, I didn't know what I was asking. I was just like, I just don't want to PhD anymore. I mean, those were kinds of the ways in which I felt like I just needed a different perspective and a different lens on who I was. Was I fully knowledgeable about what I could say about myself? No, but that was the benefit of having a conversation. Let's see. Other questions are LinkedIn courses. Could they be good to add on? I think, again, it depends on, are you just adding on just to add on, or is that something that now has become an area of focus for you and an area that you really want to be able to drive more heavily in terms of your qualifications, right? So a LinkedIn course could be a way for you to demonstrate, you know what, in addition to teaching myself this, I've been able to incorporate it into various volunteering activities, student organizations, into my dissertation, all of these other projects. If it's just, I did it for fun, right? Then does it really do very much to contribute to what you were actually wanting to showcase? Probably not. So it's always kind of thinking about those things. But I think, again, taking those courses is really thinking about what is the value that you're really trying to add to what you're saying about yourself as a candidate, right? One course, like literally an academic, I'm talking about whether it's an academic course or a LinkedIn course. One course is not necessarily going to be sort of the selling point for anything or anyone. I think it's just really thinking through, is that a value add to something that you've already kind of articulated? Is it a little bit of a bonus that might kind of get you I'm working on it kind of, mention? So I think it's really just kind of thinking through, what exactly are you hoping it contributes to who you are? I'm hoping that, again, I've gone through a whole lot of things, that you at least spend a little bit of time just looking at our resource library, clicking through a few of these things, or even one of them. Like I said, Quincia is awesome because you can actually upload your resume and just work on it and then put it away, work on it again. Those are one of those things that is a small sort of investment in time. Again, some of these other things, again, small investments. You could click open the little video of somebody talking about their experience and then kind of go, okay, that was interesting. I didn't necessarily invest in doing full-blown research or anything, but I feel like sometimes awareness of these things gives you at least places to look through.
Well, this is all super helpful. I just want to thank you so much, Bernadette, for all of this insight and your wisdom, and for also sharing your own experience. I think it can be helpful to sort of demystify and normalize some of the crazy advice that people are getting out here. Like, oh, what you need to do is go get another PhD. So thank you for sharing that. And for our students, please do take a look at those resources. Again, they're all together on Handshake. So they're in one place already laid out for you, and share them with others, and certainly share them with your dissertation advisors. If you're in the sciences and you're working with STEM faculty, share them with your PIs. Let them know that you're interested in this, because that will also clue them in to keep an eye out for opportunities as they arise for you to get more experience, to build more skills, et cetera. So for sure, take the rein by the hands, and get in there and poke around and see what you can find. Thank you so much, Bernadette. Thank you, Dr. Perry, also, and for everyone who was able to join us. If you have any questions, just let us know. Other than that, I will bid you all a good afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.